Welcome back, Tobago. The 2025 series of democratic debates kicks off with a double header. We have two motions for deliberation. Minority Leader Kelvon Morris is calling for an audit into the procurement process and the execution of 4 major road projects on the island. Mr. Morris is also calling for the Public Accounts Committee to be immediately convened to urgently review these expenditures. Chief Secretary Farley Augustine will also lay a motion calling on the Minister of National Security to establish a memorandum of understanding on effective strategies for the island's security and increase in the allocation of resources to Tobago to maintain, upgrade, and modernize national security infrastructures. Thursday, January 23rd from 1:30 p.m. You're welcome to come in and look on or log on to our social media spaces to witness the action. Either way, don't miss it.
O Almighty God, as we have come together to begin our meeting of the Assembly, we humbly beseech you to grant to all our members the light and guidance of your Holy Spirit, that we may wisely take counsel together and come to such decisions as shall promote your glory and the well-being of our citizens in this our land, so that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be enjoyed by all people. Grant this for the sake of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Members, you may be seated.
Oath of Allegiance of a new member. Announcements by the presiding officer.
Honorable members, due to the resignation of Councillor Sitika Williams-Orr, a seat within the Public Accounts Committee has now become vacant. As such, the committee has advised that Councillor Tashia Boris will fill that vacancy with the Public Accounts Committee. Leave of absence was received from Assemblyman Natasha Charles Pantin. The leave is granted.
Assembly bills sent back from Cabinet. Assembly laws brought back from Parliament. Petitions, papers.
Secretary of Finance, Trade and the Economy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I stand to lay in this House, the Tobago House of Assembly monthly budget report as at the end of September 2024 and the monthly budget report at the end of October 2024. Thank you.
Presentation of reports from 1. Dispute Resolution Commission. 2. Select committees. Chief Secretary's questions.
Minority Leader, Assemblyman Kelvon Morris.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question 1 to the Chief Secretary. Can the Chief Secretary confirm whether the...
No need to read minority. Chief Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The Chief Secretary can confirm that former Councillor Williams Orr has been hired for 3 months at the Tobago Regional Health Authority as Labor Relations Specialist at the monthly salary of $28,000 per month.
Madam Presiding Officer, question 1.
Young, yes. Question 1. The Tobago Regional Health Authority is currently in the negotiation phase, and so the answer to the question is no. No purchase has happened as yet.
Thank you. Minority?
Am I allowed to follow up or no?
They don't have follow-up.
I thought we'd follow the precedent established with questions to secretaries, since
No.
it's silent.
No.
No?
Question 2, please.
Question
Okay.
2, which I answered before, the former Councillor Sutika Williams Orr is currently employed at TRHA for a 3-month period as Labor Relations Specialist at a salary of $28,000 per month. Question number 3.
Allow for minority to ask his question, or to pose his question, rather. Minority?
Question number 3.
Chief Secretary?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. No clear timeline can be given except to say it will happen within this fiscal quarter. Last year, I pledged that we will make it available early in this calendar year. As for the mechanisms or procedures to be implemented to ensure that the disbursements to the officials, those disbursements are done in an equitable and fair manner. Please note, Madam Presiding Officer, that every single step of the way, the Tobago House of Assembly and the committees charged with both the oil spill cleanup and treating with proposed compensation to officials have utilized the services of ITOF to review and assess. The committee that assessed the requests for compensation included the president of both competing and warring officials associations on the island, and they have assessed that 47 of the claims are valid, and that committee will, in a very equitable way, using an equal percentage point, provide assistance, not compensation, to the officials. Let me take the opportunity to be pellucidly clear. Compensation is to be paid by ITOF directly, and officials are required to submit to ITOF directly for compensation. Let me be even more clear that the Ministry of Finance has not disbursed any funding to the Tobago House of Assembly for compensation to officials. Only $50 million was given to service bills or invoices for the oil spill cleanup. And let me go on record to say that the Tobago House of Assembly has spent in excess of that $50 million, which means that we are in fact reprioritizing, cutting internally to ensure that we can service those invoices. And we are saying to our officials that because we have no control over the process by ITOF, the $2 million is to assist the industry while they go through the process with ITOF to get the real compensation.
Minority Councillor, Mrs. Daniel Benoit.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 4 to the Chief Secretary.
Chief Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. In 2023, the Tobago House of Assembly began negotiations with Kingdom Airlines, abbreviated KAL, an entity out of Trinidad. In October of 2024, it was the proposed start date for operations by KAL. That start date was delayed because of the acquisition of planes by the company. Is taking longer than they anticipated. Additionally, the Tobago House of Assembly is actually awaiting the final proposal from KAL and also their request for marketing support. We are currently awaiting that.
Minority Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 5 to the Chief Secretary.
Chief Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I am happy to indicate that from February 1, 2025, all area representatives will be furnished with the requisite forms and process channel through which they can access the electoral district fund. And from that date thereafter, all areas, all electoral districts will be able to access the EDF.
Questions to Secretary? Questions for her answer?
Minority Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 256 to the Secretary of Finance, Trade and Economy, Councillor Mrs. Petalan Roberts.
Councillor Roberts.
Madam Presiding Officer, question has to do with the I Love Tobago sign that was recently relocated. This sign is an asset that was acquired and owned by the Tobago House of Assembly in June of 2020. It was after careful consideration of the safety concerns raised by both locals and tourists, and also the consideration of our priority project, the Scarborough Beautification Project, that the Chief Secretary, who acted in the capacity of Secretary of Finance at the time, took the responsibility to relocate the sign in light of those two issues that I've raised. In terms of the cost of the sign, of relocating the sign, it costed the Assembly $145,737, and I'll now provide a breakdown of the total cost. Electrical works, which cost $15,174, and this included running a conduit inside of the platform to facilitate the electrical wires within the cemented plinth. Cement works that costed $35,000 because the plinth construction involved the creation of a robust foundation base designed to support and anchor the signage. A lift truck had to be leased at a cost of $8,500 to take the sign to and from its location for its refurbishment. Painting works, $40,120. This involved a cosmetic refurbishment of the sign due to the wear and tear, the chipping, and the debris buildup from the seaside. Painting works involved priming, repainting, and detailing in its current color, red and white, and also the application of a protective clear coat. Also, it involved fabrication works costing $30,750, and this is the customization of the stainless steel encasement for the housing of the light and the lighting receptacles. And then there was the VAT of $16,193, and that is a total of the $145,000. 5,737. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Minority Councillor, any
Thank you,
follow-up?
Madam Presiding Officer. I don't think I got a response to C, the date on which the approval was given. I didn't remember hearing.
Councillor Roberts?
As I did indicate, this preceded me. The Secretary of Finance at the time was the Chief Secretary, and he granted the approval for the movement of the sign. He had responsibility for the Milford Road Esplanade, as well as the City Chief Secretary, with overall responsibility of our priority projects and getting them executed. Thank you.
I think what she's trying to determine is the date of approval.
Well, I don't have the date of the approval.
Minority Councillor, any other follow-up? Assemblyman Kelvin Morris?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 257 to the Secretary of Health.
Assemblyman Dr. Faith Brebner?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. This question refers to certification of specialists at the Scarborough General Hospital. The departments at the Scarborough General Hospital are headed by specialist medical officers or consultants who are on the Specialist Register of Medical Practitioners of Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, these departments are medical services, surgery and orthopedic services, obstetrics and gynecology, anesthetics, pediatrics, psychiatry and mental health, pathology, accident and emergency, radiology, and ophthalmology. The certification process includes, of course, the physician getting the minimum qualifications, which is either a Doctor of Medicine or a PhD of Medicine or a Doctor of Public Health overseas, who is qualified as a medical doctor, who is board certified in the United States, or has a certificate of completion of training, which is a CCT or CST, and formal registration, of course, with the Medical Board of Trinidad and Tobago, registration on the Specialist Register of the General Medical Council of the United Kingdom will also confer eligibility to be registered with the Medical Board of Trinidad and Tobago. At the Scarborough General Hospital and at, dare I say, hospitals throughout Trinidad and Tobago, the departmental medico-legal coverage extends to junior officers who are inclusive of registers, house officers, interns, or those who are completing their prescribed area or subspecialty, or those who are in training, for example, candidates in the Doctor of Medicine program at any of the university. So, in other words, the head of the department being duly registered, certified, and so forth, covers everyone else who works in the departments. And therefore, at this time, as far as I'm aware, everyone who is at the Scarborough General Hospital is covered.
Minority Leader?
Madam Presiding Officer, the question is clear, and can the Secretary therefore confirm whether the 4 acting specialists are so approved by the Medical Board of Trinidad and Tobago to perform the functions of a specialist?
Please note that that wasn't the question.
That is related because the question was...
Yep. Minority Leader, that's not the question asked yet. So is that a follow-up question?
Yes, it is. It is a follow-up question.
Dr.
because
Brebner?
just to be clear, just to bring clarity.
Dr. Brebner?
Yes, it is changed. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. So, the acting SMOs, these are their qualifications.
The question is whether these acting SMOs have been approved by the Trinidad and Tobago Medical Board to perform the function of a specialist.
Minority. I am hoping that within her answer, you would have your answer. Dr. Brebner.
Thank you. So the acting specialists are, so that we are clear, Dr. Gomez Joyce Diaz, who is a registrar in nephrology. His specializations or his credentials: second degree specialist in nephrology, 2006, first degree specialist in nephrology, 2001. Dr. Yearwood, orthopedics, registrar orthopedics, degree of Masters of Surgery in Trauma and Orthopedics. Fourth is Robinson, who is registrar in surgery, and qualifications include second degree specialist in general surgery and first degree specialist in general surgery. And the fourth acting is Pandey, who is a registrar, again, surgery, specialist medical officer, masters of surgery is the additional qualification. These are registrars who are acting. They all, Madam Presiding Officer, fall under the heads of their departments. And therefore, like other medical students, like other junior officers, like other interns, they are covered because the head of the department is covered.
The question, I think, what he's asking is if they are certified. I don't think board certified.
So the certification process actually takes a while. And because some of them have submitted their certification, they are awaiting the response. The hospital has the coverage that it requires via the medical legal requirements, which is, as I said, Madam Presiding Officer, that because the head is covered, everyone who works under the head is covered.
Minority Leader.
Madam Presiding Officer, I'm just trying to make sense of what I just heard. Is the Secretary saying that to perform the functions of a specialist, one ought not receive clearance from the Trinidad and Tobago Medical Board, which is the authorized body that allows, it's like somebody having a
Question,
driver.
Minority.
So is the Secretary saying that one can go into the hospital and become a specialist without being cleared by the Trinidad and Tobago Medical Board?
Dr. Brebner.
Madam Presiding Officer, what I am saying is the head of every department who is a specialist registered at the medical board is able to provide supervision to all of the medical staff who work under him or her. So if you are a specialist and you are conferred the full position of specialist, then you will have had the certification from the board. If you are an acting specialist, it means that you are working under the jurisdiction of someone who is even senior to you, and therefore you can work legally in that area because it is considered as part of the process. And by the way, this is normal throughout Trinidad and Tobago.
Final follow-up, Minority.
Madam Presiding Officer, so is the Secretary comfortable that Tobagonians are subjected to persons who aren't properly cleared by the medical board to perform the functions of specialists in these critical areas of health delivery? Is the Secretary comfortable with the fact that these persons are performing functions, life-threatening functions, that are not properly cleared by the medical board?
Assemblyman Brebner.
Madam Presiding Officer, this Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection is comfortable and is proud of the service that is provided by all of our health professionals. This Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, who has oversight for the Tobago House of Assembly, is extremely proud of those who have given of their time, effort, and service to provide the required medical attention that the people of Tobago need, given the limited resources that we have on this island. Given the fact, Madam Presiding Officer, that if these acting SMOs were not here, many of the people who would need the services on the island would be forced to go to Trinidad to get those same services, Madam Presiding Officer. I stand here comfortable and very proud of all of the work that is being done at the Tobago Regional Health Authority, because they provide human service to the people on this island.
Minority Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 258 to the Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Councillor Tashia Boris.
Councillor Boris.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. To answer part A of the question, it should be noted that the Tobago Rhythm and Soul Festival is not a replacement for the Tobago Jazz Experience, and therefore it is not a shift in policy at this time. To answer question B, the budget for the TRSF stands at just over $9.38 million. And to answer part C of the question, if I'm in agreement that the previous decision taken 9 months ago, I don't know what decision they are referring to cancel the TJE was short-sighted. This administration, through the Chief Secretary, is on record as stating in April of 2023 that April of 2023 would be the last time the Tobago Jazz Experience would be hosted, and in that current format, and that in future, the Tobago House of Assembly, through the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited, would be seeking partnerships with private promoters and provide support to private promoters to have events around that traditional period. That still stands. The Tobago Rhythm and Soul Festival is not a product of the Tobago House of Assembly. It is a public-private partnership between the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited and a private promoter who approached the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited to have this event, and they are coordinating to pull off, which I may say will be a successful event, because we have a headliner in the form of Mr. Buju Banton, who will be coming to Tobago in April of 2025. And we are pleased with the work that the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited has done and continues to do in partnering with private promoters to expand our events tourism industry on the island. I thank you.
Minority Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Part B of the question, what profit does the Tobago House of Assembly expect to make, was not answered. So,
Councillor Boris.
The Tobago House of Assembly will not be making a profit on this. The Tobago Festivals Commission Limited, in its agreement with the promoter, hopes to realize profit from this event. They have not requested any additional funding from the Tobago House of Assembly to supplement their allocation for the hosting of this event. That $9.3 million budget that I indicated previously is being sorted in terms of financing through alternative financing mechanisms, gate receipts, and sponsorship. So once the event is completed and all the calculations are done, there is a strong possibility that profit will be realized, and that profit will be realized and go to the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited.
Minority Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Does the Secretary care? We are asking, Madam Presiding Officer, who is the private partner, the private promoter that is engaged in this project with the Tobago Festivals Commission?
Councillor Boris.
Madam Presiding Officer, I do not have that information at hand, but it can be provided subsequently.
Minority Councillor.
Madam Presiding Officer, it is quite appalling that the THA is...
Members. Minority Councillor question.
Madam Presiding Officer, it is appalling that the division and the Tobago Festivals Commission is putting out
Question, Minority Councillor.
$9.28 million, and the Secretary is unaware.
Question,
to tell the
Minority
House,
Councillor.
Madam Presiding Officer, what is the stake? How soon, Madam Presiding Officer, will the information come to the minority and the people of Tobago for their hard-earned
Councillor
$9.38
Boris.
Madam Presiding Officer, I didn't hear a question to answer. And me not having the information at hand is because it was not asked. I came here prepared to answer the question as laid out in the order paper. The order paper does not state who is the promoter, who have we done this public-private partnership with. So if it is that the minority has a question to ask, they can go through the process, put it on the order paper, and I'll be happy to provide the information. I just simply stated that I do not have the information at hand, and I have no issue providing that information to the minority councillor at a date and time of your choosing, Madam Presiding Officer.
Can this information be provided on or before the next sitting, please? Thank you. Minority Leader.
Thank you so much, Madam Presiding Officer. Question 259 to the Secretary of Settlements, Public Utilities and Rural Development.
Assemblyman Pollard.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Answer to Part A of the question with respect to request for a proposal for Adventure Phase 3, the position and qualifications of persons who were part of the evaluation committee, Ms. Crystal Otley, or Procurement Manager, Chairperson, Mr. Robert Superville, Member, non-scoring, Ms. Marcia Guy Taylor, Procurement Supervisor, non-scoring. You had Mr. Atiba Martin, Engineer, Works Division, scoring. Ms. Petalan Roberts, Management Accountant at that time, Division of Finance. Ms. Nikisha Powder, Engineer, Office of the Chief Secretary, sorry. Nikisha Powder, Architect, Division of Infrastructure. Mr. Richard Hines, Specialist Engineer at the Division of Settlements, Public Utilities, and Rural Development. The companies that were shortlisted and the address, we had Warner Sanitation and Construction, address, I think it's Scarborough, Tobago. We had North Star Construction, also Scarborough, and we also had CCSL, Unit number 5, Allfields Countries, Hamden, Lowlands, Tobago. The companies that were selected and the total value of the contract, the company that was selected was CCSL, and the value of the contract was $186 million. Madam Presiding Officer, Part D of the question could be provided to the Minority Leader before the next sitting.
Minority Leader, Assemblyman Morris.
Thank you, of course. I just wanted to find out from the Secretary if he's concerned as to the contractor's ability to complete this project, given that this said contractor was previously engaged by another division to undertake a similar type of design-build finance, and to date has been unable to deliver it due to insufficient funds.
Assemblyman Pollard.
Everything concerns us on this side, Madam Presiding Officer. But I think the evaluation committee did their work, and based on the RFP that was submitted, I have no problems with the contractor being able to carry out this exercise.
Assemblyman Morris.
Secretary, are you concerned, as I am, that in terms of the ability to provide the confidence that you have the financial security, that perhaps what was the documentation that would have given the evaluation committee the confidence to award this contract, given the very fact that I just outlined, that the company said they don't have enough money to do a $20 million contract? So if they cannot, the question is...
Assemblyman Morris, a question.
Okay,
please.
if they are unable to finance $20 million, how is it, can they be able to prove that they could finance $186 million? You can't finance $20 million.
Thank you, Assemblyman Morris. Assemblyman Pollard.
Well, I don't have any proof that the contractor cannot find $20 million. I have no proof of that. So, Madam Presiding Officer, what must be stated also, as we stated at Warner's Construction, Warner Construction is a company that, although they were given the RFP was issued, never tendered any RFP. So the Tobago-based companies, although you put the tenders out there, are not subscribing or not coming forth as being able to finance these projects. And if it means that someone on paper could show, based on the evaluation committee, that they could get the work done, I certainly want to be better than the two last Secretary of Settlements that built 4 houses and gave out the same 4 houses. I am certain.
I have one more follow-up, if you so inclined.
Assemblyman Morris, final follow-up.
Final follow-up. Can the Secretary confirm whether in his personal capacity he held any meeting prior to the award of this contract with the selected contractor? Whether he met with the...
Question. Assemblyman Pollard.
Well, as my colleague, Secretary Boyce, I have not seen that on the other people. I didn't come prepared to answer. I've met with many contractors. Madam Presiding Officer. I've met with contractors from Tobago, Trinidad, international contractors. So if you want to say who I ever meet with contractors, I have no problem. Go ahead.
Oh, my.
Minority Councillor.
Is that a question?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 260 to the Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, Assemblyman Dr. Faith Brebner.
261 to Assemblyman Brebner.
260.
260. 260 is listed to Secretary Pantin. No?
Says Brebner. 261 is the minority leader's question, Madam President.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, 260, this refers to the Roxborough Health Facility. Yes? The Tobago Regional Health Authority contracted the services of SLR Medical Limited to produce an unbiased report documenting the ability of the Roxborough Hospital to function as a 24-hour facility. The service provider is in the business of providing medical and healthcare consultancy in the areas of service delivery, governance, safety, and appraisal, which includes education, on behalf of both public and private sector hospitals. The service provider is contracted to perform the service for a period of 10 weeks, and that 10-week period commenced on the 25th of November, 2024, and is scheduled to go until the 31st of January. The consultant was retained using the single source method of procurement as set out in the regulations of the Public Procurement Act. The cost of the service is £13,000 plus out-of-pocket expenses if they occur.
Minority Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Could the Secretary, upon completion of the report, make the reports available to members of the House, please?
Assemblyman Brebner.
Madam Presiding Officer, given that this is a healthcare facility where we need to ensure that we are providing top-class service to individuals who are confident in the service that they provide, I'm a bit hesitant to do so, probably because the documents that have found their way onto the floor of this House have somehow frequently found their way into the public space on Facebook, on social media, and so forth. And given the delicacies of what they are going to be reporting on, personally, I don't have a challenge with it, but I am concerned about that report making its way into the public space because of what that report can contain and so forth. So, Madam Presiding Officer, if the Minority Council can confirm that they will not try to leak the information, then sure.
Minority Council, follow up.
Yes, Madam Presiding Officer, follow up. Is SNR the consultant, single source consultant that was selected, are they currently registered with the OPR, Madam Presiding Officer?
Assemblyman Brebner.
They are a foreign entity. I was not a part of the procurement process for them to be, but they are a foreign entity. I honestly don't know, Madam Presiding Officer. I don't know.
Minority Council.
Madam President, that was quite telling, because even though you're a foreign entity, you may not satisfy the qualifications or the requirements to be registered with OPR, and as such, you may be disqualified. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I think particularly for a single source selection, in keeping with the procurement practices as the member would have indicated, I would have hoped that those processes would have been intact.
Any question? Assemblyman Morris.
Madam Presiding Officer, question number 261 to the Secretary of Health.
Assemblyman Brebner.
Okay. 261 or 262 relating to the ambulances. The cost per unit is 1.295 million plus an extended 3-year warranty and factory training at 88,750 per unit. There was the installation of GPS devices with online access for the 4 ambulances at $9,400 total. Fabrication and installation of side door on the 4 ambulances, $56,250. The supplier was paid a total of $8.035 million to date, and this represents approximately 50% of the total cost of $16.605 million for the 12 units that were ordered. Why are they not in operation at this time? 4 ambulances arrived in Trinidad in 2024. 3 of them arrived in Tobago on the 11th of December 24, and they were thoroughly inspected by the TRHA representatives. These units were found to require some additional modification for them to be completely aligned with the legal requirements and the current practices at the TRHA. It is estimated that the necessary work on the 4 ambulances that are already in country, those would be completed by the end of March.
Assemblyman Morris.
Madam Presiding Officer, given the number of modification on delivery, I am quite concerned, and I would like to know what was the procurement process to identify this supplier of a contract of the value of over $16 million? And were they clear?
One question at a
Yeah,
time,
okay, sorry.
please.
No problem. No problem.
Assemblyman Brebner.
Madam Presiding Officer, again, the procurement process happened outside of my direct input, but procurement at the TRHA includes detailing of requirements of any service or item, sending out RFPs or RFQs, having the companies provide feedback, and then finally going to the board of directors for approval to go out for the contract or to approve the contract for the particular service provider. And I assume that that is the process that was used in this one, since that is the normal process for procurement at the TRHA.
Minority.
Madam Presiding
Assemblyman
Officer,
Morris. Sorry.
given the magnitude of the contract, isn't a contract of this nature requiring perhaps approval at the level of the division and the executive council, and therefore shouldn't the secretary?
One question at a time.
So did the executive council have oversight or approval for the final sum of this contract, and was the contract competitive?
That's still 2 questions.
Okay, so let me start. I'll leave the first for last. Was the contract a competitive contract, or again, a sole selected contract?
Assemblyman Brebner.
Madam Presiding Officer, again, I don't know, because the process went through the process. I am not intimately involved in the processes of procurement at the TRHA. So I really do not know if there was a single source, sole source, open market. That was not part of my business almost, Madam Presiding Officer. As a matter of fact, legally I'm not allowed to even be involved in the process at that level.
Members. Assemblyman Morris, final question.
Madam Presiding Officer, so given that the CEO and even the board they have limitation in what they can approve, was this contract approved by the executive council, and therefore was the information available to them?
Thank you, Assemblyman Morris. Assemblyman Pollard.
Madam Presiding Officer, this contract did not need executive council approval, and therefore it did not come to the executive council for approval. Exactly, the TRHA as a company did it on their own.
Interesting, so TRHA
Huh?
is a runaway house. They could just do what they want.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the Assembly, and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I acknowledge that this sitting is designated private members' motion. However, according to Standing Order 34, I beg to move to have the Executive Council matters disposed of before that of private members' business.
Honorable members, the question put is that Executive Council matters be disposed of before private members' business. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it. Chief Secretary, you may now move this motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to lay before this House the following. Whereas the right to security and the right to life are fundamental human rights enshrined in the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, and whereas the people of Trinidad and Tobago are currently facing a state of emergency due to escalating levels of crime and violence, with Tobago experiencing a significant increase in criminal activity, which has disrupted the island's customary peace and safety, and whereas national security is listed in the 6th schedule of the Tobago House of Assembly Act number 40 of 1996 as a matter over which the Assembly, in quotation, the Assembly shall have no responsibility, and whereas the Tobago House of Assembly, despite not being responsible for formulating or implementing policy on national security, has nonetheless provided resources to assist with national security matters in Tobago, and whereas the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996 encourages mutual consultation and collaboration with the central government through mechanisms embedded in sections 26, 31, and 37, and whereas the central government has not allotted sufficient resources for national security on the island of Tobago, thereby compromising the safety and security of its residents and adversely affecting the island's tourism industry, business environment, and overall well-being, be it resolved that this House, as a matter of urgency, mandates the Chief Secretary to call for a meeting with the Minister of National Security to immediately establish a memorandum of understanding pursuant to Section 26 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act, aimed at devising proper and effective strategies for national security in Tobago, and be it further resolved that this House calls on the central government to urgently increase the allocation of resources to Tobago for the maintenance, upgrade, and modernization of its national security infrastructure, including personnel, equipment, facilities, and technology tailored to the island's unique needs. Madam Presiding Officer, Trinidad and Tobago is currently in a state of emergency. When we met last year and we extended Christmas greetings and well wishes to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and all of the high office holders in this country, we did not anticipate at that time that we will enter into 2025 with a state of emergency. Let me take this opportunity, as this is our very first sitting in the year 2025, to extend once again New Year greetings and best wishes for 2025 to the people of Tobago and by extension the people of Trinidad and Tobago, including those of our citizens that exist in the diaspora. Madam Presiding Officer, Act 40 of 1996 permits that where the Tobago House of Assembly does not have a responsibility, that the Tobago House of Assembly can in fact enter into a memorandum of understanding with the relevant agency and or ministry from the central government for the execution of those functions on the island of Tobago. When we look at the security concerns in Tobago, when we look at the neglect of Tobago's national security infrastructure, we are left with no choice, Madam Presiding Officer, than to come to this House and to seek the approval of my colleagues to go before the Ministry of National Security and to thereby request that we enter into an MOU to treat with security issues on the island. Prior to this administration, the Auditor General's Department actually flagged the Tobago House of Assembly for spending resources, monetary resources, on national security since it is not a fifth schedule item. And because of that, we have in the space at present, Madam Presiding Officer, very cautious, very reluctant public service when it comes to executing instructions from the executive to actually assist the national security apparatus on the island. It is a challenge I face on almost a monthly basis. We have resorted to a strategy to allow for the legality of our support. We have resorted to a strategy where we ask the varying arms of the national security on the island of Tobago to go looking for whatever service they need and to then write us asking the Tobago House of Assembly to donate, to make a donation towards the provision of these services. And that is so that I can make the public officers, the public accounting officers, comfortable enough to assist the national security apparatus and agenda on the island. But, Madam Presiding Officer, notwithstanding, this administration has spent more than any other administration on national security over the last 3 years. As a matter of fact, what we are experiencing is a situation where the Executive Council from time to time is asked to forego other priorities so that we can pump the monies into the national security apparatus on the island. What we experienced last year, insofar as our murder rate, is unacceptable. And because that is unacceptable, we cannot sit on our hands in Tobago and simply say, well, the law says it is not or it shall not be a responsibility of the Tobago House of Assembly, and so we will do nothing. I prefer to be challenged by an Auditor General on this matter than to see more of our people gunned down in the streets. And so there is a requirement for bold action. When we look at our statistics for the year that ended a few weeks ago, we saw that in 2024, we had 790 serious reported crimes. In 2023, there was 757. In 2024, we had 244 violent crimes. In 2023, there were 247. In 2024, we had 26 murders, most in our history. In 2023, we had 14. In 2024, we had 58 shootings or woundings. In 2023, we had 30. In 2024, we had 79 robberies, and coincidentally, we also had 79 robberies, reported robberies, in 2023. As it relates to fatals, in 2024, we had 10 reported accidents. In 2023, we had 7. In 2024, we had 12 fatalities. 2023, we had 7. In 2024, the police recovered 30 firearms. 2023, they recovered 15. When it comes to narcotics, in 2024, Madam Presiding Officer, in Tobago, 299.1 kgs of marijuana was recovered. In 2023, that figure was 103.4 kgs. And in 2024, we had 14.96 kgs recovered of cocaine. And in 2023, we had 0.0838 kgs recovered. It should be noted that for the period 1st to the 20th of January, that Tobago recorded a total of 30 serious reported crimes, and in 2024, for that same period, so this year, January 1st to the 20th, so far we had 30 reported SRCs, or serious reported crimes, and in 2024, for the same period, we had 35. Last year at this time, we already had 2 murders. We are currently at 1. With regards to firearms, so far for 2025, the TTPS has recovered 2 pistols and 55 rounds of 9mm, and those were seized from the streets of Tobago. We ought to note, Madam Presiding Officer, that an increase in firearms and ammunition detection from 38 in 2023 to 69 in 2024 means that we have the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service doing a superior job in recovering firearms and ammunition, and they must be congratulated for that. We must also note that the single largest marijuana bust happened last year at a whopping street value of $42 million. Again, we congratulate the TTPS for that. But, Madam Presiding Officer, while that is happening, we have to be aware that Trinidad and Tobago is experiencing a significant escalation in gang warfare. According to USAID and their report for Eastern and Southern Caribbean with their criminal dynamics study, when we look at the regional report, Trinidad and Tobago, as at 2023, had 186 known gangs with 1,750 membership. That said report, Madam Presiding Officer, is also estimating that in Trinidad and Tobago, 8% of our students, meaning children in school, are involved. 8%. In fact, Madam Presiding Officer, I remember not so long ago recalling an experience I had at the primary school in Golden Lane. And many people were cynical about it. Fast-tracked to about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we saw Senior Superintendent Eli saying to Tobagonians that the trend is actually showing that younger and younger people, people as young as 12 years, and even younger, getting involved with gang warfare. More than that, Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to share some uncomfortable statistics from USAID's report. Now, this USAID report was delivered to my office last year by the outgoing United States Ambassador Candice Bond, one whom received the Hummingbird Gold recently. And in that report, we have some frightening statistics that justifies why today we must take a decision as a House that the Chief Secretary should go and seek to get the Ministry of National Security to enter into an MOU with us for the execution of some of these 6 scheduled items, since we are already doing it. We're already doing it, but we need to formalize it and ensure it fits within the confines of the law. The statistics from this USA report, Madam Presiding Officer, says that in 2009, Tobago had 3 known gangs. In 2012, Tobago had 5 known gangs. In 2014, Tobago had 9 known gangs. In 2019, Tobago had 24 known gangs. And in 2022, Tobago had 28 known gangs, meaning 4 additional between 2019 and 2022. But that's not just alarming on its own. If we should do a comparison with the other districts in Trinidad, we will see a frightening development, Madam Presiding Officer. If we look at Port of Spain, Madam Presiding Officer, Port of Spain, in 2014, while we had 9 gangs, they had 23 gangs. By 2019, while we had 24 gangs on record, from this study, Port of Spain had 41. And then in 2022, while we have 28, Port of Spain is being reported as having 21, meaning that their trajectory is going downwards over the last couple of years, between 2019 and 2022. But if we look at northeastern Tobago, for most of the years, actually we have a higher number of gangs than northeastern division, higher than eastern division, higher than southwestern division, higher than southern. We trend lower than western and Port of Spain for most of those years. Why am I sharing this statistic? I'm sharing it because I desire that the people of Tobago understand that this crime problem that Trinidad and Tobago has is not a foreign problem to us. It exists in our communities. And so this has to be about protecting Tobago communities and Tobago families. But why are we asking the House to approve and to encourage and to mandate the Chief Secretary to have this MOU done? Well, let's take a look at the state of the national security apparatus in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, if you go to the Coast Guard operational base, we have one operational base on island that was opened by Lennox Dinoon as chairman of the Tobago House of Assembly. So you could tell how long ago it was open. And not a fix, not an upgrade, not an addition, not anything since that time. Toilets backing up. Sleeping conditions poor. Paint falling off. Coastal erosion. Because the operational base literally exists at the end of a jetty. When we go to the Coast Guard base itself, the Tobago headquarters located at Lower Scarborough, at the end of Calypso Rose Boulevard. I am ashamed to even walk into that place. It is not even fitting to mine swines. But that's where we have our men and women working out of. That same Coast Guard don't have a boat to sail anywhere around the island. And let me give you a practical example of how it is hampering crime fighting on the island. About 4 months ago, some intel was received that they were going to be stealing some vessels, some fishing vessels from out of the Boku area. How do I know? Because I am on the phone with Naval Lieutenant Valentine and trying to get a boat from a civilian for them to use. And after I beg and get a boat, then they say to me, well, we can't sail the boat ourselves because it's a civilian boat. So you have to send the civilian to sail the boat themselves. And so I run home, hunt for a black hoodie for the guy so that he could be masked in some way because he is now being co-opted to be part of a national security response. And then on top of that, after doing all of that, then I'm told, well, we have to get a police officer to join them on the vessel in order to facilitate proper charging. By the time we're trying to organize all of that, the best approach was to just send some police in the Buku area, create a heightened presence so that it could scare away anybody who will want to come and steal a vessel. That is the state of border security on this island, not a vessel. And when I say, look, let me at least rent a boat. It could be any boat. It could be a fishing boat. Maybe they thought I was thinking about a pirogue. Any boat. The ministry said no. And tried to ridicule me. But they won't provide a single vessel for the Coast Guard. Not one. You won't provide. Not one. So how are our fishermen supposed to be safe? How are we supposed to protect our coastline? Who is actually encircling this island? We are an island. We're surrounded by water. Water everywhere. But it's an open sepulchre. And it's almost counterproductive that we are under an SOE. But anything could come in. And that also includes human beings. Because last year, there was a bust here in Tobago where migrants who were illegally here were picked up. Migrants who were part of a forced sex trade were picked up right here in Tobago. And that included children. But our borders are open. And so if the Ministry of National Security won't do the work, then send us the money and let us do it. Because clearly they are incapable of doing it. And then if we go from the Coast Guard and we go up to what we call Army Camp in Signal Hill, I met with the Minister of National Security. The first time I met with him was sometime in either late 2022 or early 2023. He visited there. He was appalled by the state there. I wish Tobagonians could walk through there and see the state that we have our sons and daughters working and living in. It's deplorable. And the Ministry of National Security is doing nothing. I have to go up there with engineers from works, take them away from doing 5th schedule items, carry them up there and say, look, this place got burned down, fix the electrical. I have to go there with the chief and say, look at the mattress that you have. Our Tobagonians sleeping on. Is our people sleeping there? Find mattress and give them. Stationery. I have to be raiding my office sometimes and picking up whatever paper, pen, ink, printer. And then sometimes I'm having to instruct to purchase to give to them. And then on top of that, they don't even have working vehicular assets. So as a strategy, we want to have joint patrols. But I don't know if we're going to do the joint patrol on foot. I don't know if the army is expected to do joint patrol by walking up to Charlottesville and walking down to Crown Point from Signal Hill. Not a vehicle. But the Tobago House Assembly have to step in, have to spend money, have to rent vehicle. And then when the THA trying to rent vehicle, we have people in the space, when they realize it's a joint patrol, saying, me I want my vehicle involved in that. It's a difficult task. But you know what's happening? We are taking it from our 5th schedule items and reprioritizing it for central government business. That's what we are doing. And then when we go to the TTPS, well, they might be a little better. Not Scarborough Station, though. If you look at where officers in Scarborough Station are supposed to spend the night, where they're supposed to stay, horrible. You walk across to the fire station. How long now they're trying to fix it? Fire officers and army officers work together, did the work themselves without being paid, without a contractor, and just bringing it over the edge so they can move back to the Scarborough base. Not even that could happen. We see around this country fire officers falling out of fire trucks. In Tobago, it's questionable whether or not we could really handle any major fire anywhere in any community. Our fire tenders, poor condition. The one ambulance they have, not working. Are we children of a lesser God? Are we second-class citizens? Why are we being treated this way? And therefore, when we come here and we say it is imperative that we do an MOU and we ask the ministry, look, when it comes to some matters with security in Tobago, you, THA, continue to handle it, but now we will give you some budget to do it. Because currently we're doing a whole lot. Using monies prioritized for other areas. When we look at the port, in April of last year, I sat in a meeting at the waterfront in Port of Spain. I was actually ridiculed by Gary Griffith, former Commissioner of Police, who felt I should not have gone to Trinidad to meet with the minister. But in my mind, he's the Minister of National Security. It is a 6th scheduled item for which he has responsibility. I have a security problem on my island. I don't care where we meet. Right? So I went and I met with him in Port of Spain. And in that meeting, the Port Authority said to us, we are in the process of procuring scanners that can treat with vehicles and can treat with being able to assess travelers in a much more efficient way. We all have experienced it coming off of the port and the occasional police operation trying to go through every vehicle with their dogs, slowing your ability to get out of the port. Not the best first impression you want for an island that earns from domestic tourism. But where are we? That was April last year. Where are we? The port have procured 2 Buster K10G density scanners. This is for vehicles as well. Those 2 scanners are in Tobago, but they are not currently in use, as 50 officers are still to be trained. So they buy two Buster K10G density scanners, but they're not in use because nobody in Tobago is trained to use them yet. Right? The scanners for the arrival hall have been installed, thankfully. Those are the ones for the passengers and the cruise arrivals. The large vehicle scanners are still being procured. So the large vehicle scanners are still being procured. After being told in that meeting that they don't have the space capacity at the port in Port of Spain to put down a large vehicle scanner, so they put one in Tobago. We are approaching a 1 year since that conversation, and we still don't have the scanners in Tobago. And those that were purchased, like the 2 Buster K10G density scanners, they are there, but not in operation, because nobody in Tobago is trained to use it. There is an opportunity cost, Madam Presiding Officer, to the Tobago House of Assembly reprioritizing its resources to treat with some of these national security needs. Although these needs may seem ordinary, simple, they are absolutely necessary. And allow me, Madam President, to give you an example of how the opportunity cost of spending it on national security has impacted our delivery in other areas. In 2022, I came to this house in June, and I said we have to begin work to set up for Tobago a Department of Safety and Security. We did the feasibility. We know what the structure should be. We know where the department should be housed. We know what equipment we need to purchase for the department. We know what work they can do as per the 5th schedule of Act 40 of 1996. But the monies that we have budgeted to do that, we are now taking it to get vehicles, to buy bed, to buy printer, to send materials and workers down by the prison to fix it up, to be able to do electrical work, to do all sorts of things. So when we should have been spending that money to develop our own Department of Safety and Security, we are spending it on the 6th scheduled item for which the law says we shall not have a responsibility. That cannot be fair to us. And that is not a sustainable way for us to manage the security needs on the island of Tobago. It is not the most efficient way to manage that, Madam Presiding Officer. We can't have a situation where the Tobago House of Assembly in the past have procured assets. The THA gave them to the national security apparatus. The THA buy ambulance to them already, buy vehicles to them already, and you know what happens every single time? Somebody will say, well, they need to send them down in Trinidad, and they will go down to Trinidad, never return to Tobago, and be used elsewhere in the country, but not in Tobago, that actually spend the money for them. That has been the history. And so because we don't have any authority, we can call up the Chief of Defense Staff and tell him that a vehicle we give to national security, he can't take it in Trinidad, we'll be out of place. We don't have that legal right. But if we have an MOU establishing what we should be doing for national security, how we'll be doing it, what cost, and who will be bearing that cost, then we could have a framework by which the investment made in national security on the island of Tobago remains for the benefit of the people of Tobago. Here in Tobago, we also have another problem. And I don't want Tobagonians to think for a second that the only part of the solution is just in treating with the spend on assets for national security. Because in our communities, we also have some responsibility that I'm not certain people are taking seriously, or at least not serious enough. We saw that our first murder for the year was a high school student. And sometimes we think as policymakers that the best response to crime is to just provide everything for free and they will stop crime. The statistics show that they're stopping crime no way about. Here we have a student that has free education, free teacher, free access to free transportation, free meals, including meals in the first week and last week of school when the rest of the country not providing meals in school. Access to books free, access to computers and laptops in the schools for free, access to a school at every single July, August, guaranteed that millions will be spent on that establishment to keep it in a decent enough shape. In other Caribbean countries, students have to pay to do their own CXCs. It's free here. And notwithstanding how free that is, we still find young people who have all this access and freeness choosing a life of crime. Which means that as policymakers, we have to do more. We have to do more than simply provide freeness. We have to do more than that. We have to find a way to encourage people in our communities, to actually understand that they have a role, that they have a responsibility in keeping villages and families safe. I remember when I was a young child going to the library in Charlottesville, I used to hate to go to the library in Charlottesville because when I come off the bus or the maxi or out of the car, whatever, in Charlottesville, from the...
Remember, you have 5 minutes.
Sure. From the time I exit to the time I get to the library, every village I meet have to ask me who you be, who you belong to, what you're doing here. And I used to go home and complain and tell my parents and my grandparents, why are people so fast? Why are they only asking me my business? But now as an adult, I have an appreciation for what communities can do to protect themselves and to protect each other. We have people in our communities who are choosing alliances and affiliation with syndicates, crime syndicates, from outside of the island over their community, over their families. And so a responsibility must be taken up by each individual in the community. It must be part and parcel of the fight against crime. I want to take this opportunity before I close, Madam Presiding Officer, to also indicate that with the increase in resources being placed at community development, youth development, and sport in particular, that is meant to recreate social cohesion. And in areas such as Golden Lane, that has no sporting facility, we are doing all we can to ensure that we will get one before the end of this calendar year. Sometime late last year, the THA received the deed for the lands at Culloden that were purchased. I think that's some 147 plus acres. That land came with approvals already for tourism-based development, but we took a decision as an executive that the first thing that must go there must be a playing field for the community as a way of rallying the young people in that area, where we are in fact seeing a significant increase in the number of criminal activities. When we go to the minority leaders area in WIM, we have a facility that's been constructed for the last 10 years, passed through about 6 different secretaries. We are insistent that that which they could not finish, we will finish and deliver to the people of that community. And so I want to urge and encourage the Secretary of Community Development, Youth Development and Sport, and the Assistant Secretary, the Secretary of Education, those two in particular. I want to encourage you all to do all in your power on the social front. But while we are doing that, Madam Presiding Officer, we are saying that we should enter into an MOU with the Ministry of National Security so that we can solve these legal questions once and for all, and that the THA can properly continue to expend resources on national security, which is a central government business. And when I said to the central government, through the Prime Minister, mind your business, that's what I meant. Whatever is yours on the 6th schedule, mind it. And you're not even minding it properly. Mind it. So when I tell you mind your business, 6th schedule is your business, mind it. Mind your business. Our business is not 5th schedule, but your business is 6th schedule, mind it. Trying to determine when the THA calls an election, when that's the business of this house. Correct. But 6th schedule, which is your business, you're not minding. Exactly. Fast and out of place, mind your business. Finally, Madam Presiding Officer, allow me to end by acknowledging a visitor in our presence. On my way here, I received a phone call indicating that the Israeli ambassador to Panama and the Caribbean was an island and was approaching my office. It was not a visit I expected. Certainly this is a surprise. I am on public record concerning my position where Palestine and what's happening there is concerned, and that does not change one bit. But certainly Tobago being a place for hospitality, I wish to acknowledge the presence of the Israeli ambassador who is in the house. And I wish that at some point during this sitting that I will have to step outside so that at least I do the honorable thing and greet the ambassador, the Israeli ambassador, and then return. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I so beg to move.
Honorable members, and welcome to our visitors and all visitors in the public gallery. Honorable members, the question proposed is, whereas the right to security and the right to life are fundamental human rights enshrined in the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, and whereas the people of Trinidad and Tobago are currently facing a state of emergency, SOE, due to escalating levels of crime and violence, with Tobago experiencing a significant increase in criminal activity, which has disrupted the island's customary peace and safety, and whereas national security is listed in the 6th schedule of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996 as a matter over which the Assembly shall have no responsibility, and whereas the Tobago House of Assembly, despite not being responsible for formulating or implementing policy on national security, has nonetheless provided resources to assist with national security matters in Tobago. And whereas the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996 encourages mutual consultation and collaboration with the central government through mechanisms embedded in Section 26, 31, and 37, and whereas the central government has not allocated sufficient resources for national security on the island of Tobago, thereby compromising the safety and security of its residents and adversely affecting the island's tourism industry, business environment, and overall well-being. Be it resolved that this House, as a matter of urgency, mandates the Chief Secretary to call for a meeting with the Minister of National Security to immediately establish a memorandum of understanding pursuant to Section 26 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996, aimed at devising proper and effective strategies for national security in Tobago. And be it further resolved that this House calls on the central government to urgently increase the allocation of resources to Tobago for the maintenance, upgrade, and modernization of its national security infrastructure, including personnel, equipment, facilities, and technology tailored to the island's unique needs. Member? You may now join this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And of course, please permit me to extend through you, Madam Presiding Officer, a warm Tobago welcome to our esteemed ambassador. And Madam Presiding Officer, also allow me to extend to my colleagues and to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, Happy New Year and all the best for 2025. Madam Presiding Officer, this motion brought before us today is nothing short of mischievous, vexatious, and downright hypocritical. It is an attempt by this Chief Secretary to mask the glaring failures of this administration. Madam Presiding Officer, it is no secret that under this Chief Secretary's watch, they have prevailed over the most murderous situation on the island. And if you are to do the analysis per population, Tobago has even a greater crime issue than even when compared to Trinidad. Madam Presiding Officer, it is important to understand and to appreciate that even as we speak, this Chief Secretary callously, carelessly, basically sent out an open invitation to criminals. It is beyond troubling that the Chief Secretary would so carelessly sensitive national security issues in a way that could alert criminals.
Minority Leader, I'm going to caution you with your inferences.
Point of order, Madam Presiding Officer.
Madam,
Point of order.
Do you give way?
no, Madam Presiding. He will have his time
He
to
has
offer.
to stand on a point
A
of order.
point of order is not a point of clarity.
He
A
will
point
have
of-
his
A point-
time to.
Have a seat,
No
Minority.
standing orders.
A point of order, he has his way. Continue, Chief Secretary.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer. The standing orders is clear about imputing improper motives.
I just warned him
And
against that.
I wish you to not just warn, but to halt the member from so doing. Additionally, let me be abundantly clear. Any information shared today was cleared with national security before sharing it.
Chief Secretary, Assemblyman Augustine and Assemblyman Morris, this is a very sensitive topic. So all members would be cautioned as to your language and the information that you are about to put there. Continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, and it is for this very reason why I am concerned that such sensitive matters of national security is being placed in the public domain in the way that we just heard. Madam Presiding Officer, matters like these aren't for public show. They require quiet, serious discussions with the right people, like the Minister of National Security. And I have no doubt that this Minister of National Security would be willing to facilitate a conversation only if the Chief Secretary will answer his calls. Because we know he has a challenge with taking calls and returning calls. That is public information. And therefore, I am flabbergasted that this kind of information is being discussed in the public domain in this kind of way. Madam Presiding Officer, but what are the facts? The Chief Secretary has just told the world that there is no patrolling of the... Madam. The Chief Secretary is giving the world that the Chief Secretary is on record as giving the world the impression that in this country called Trinidad and Tobago, there's absolutely no patrolling of our borders. And that is absolutely incorrect, absolutely misleading. And Madam Presiding Officer, let me share the facts. Because perhaps that situation existed in the time of his friends, the UNC in 2015, when they canceled the OPVs, those OPVs vessels.
Members, we allowed for Assemblyman Augustine to present uninterrupted. Please be guided by the standing orders of this House. When a member is presenting, there should be no interruptions. Thank you.
Madam Presiding Officer, so his friends canceled the OPVs in 2015 and left our borders open. But what did the PNM administration do, Madam Presiding Officer? The fact is the central government has made substantial and proactive investments in maritime security. That is a fact. In 2021, because yes, you don't discuss national security in public like you're a reckless Chief Secretary.
Assemblyman Morris, please have a seat. Assemblyman James.
Thank you.
I think by now you should know better. No cross-talking. Everybody would have a fair opportunity to do their presentation. Thank you.
Madam Presiding
Please
Officer,
continue.
I understand their anxiousness when their friends' names are called. I understand it. But Madam Presiding Officer, I'm providing the facts. In 2021, the introduction of two long-range offshore patrol vessels, CG-41 and CG-62, marked a significant enhancement in our maritime surveillance. That is a fact. These vessels are actively, and the minister publicly placed that on the record of the Parliament just 2 days ago. They are actively patrolling our waters. So therefore, that insinuation by the Chief Secretary that there's no patrolling is absolutely false, absolutely reckless, and absolutely misleading, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, yet the Chief Secretary comes here and continuously falsely claims insufficient resources. Let us remember the disastrous legacy of his UNC allies. Under their tenure, as I mentioned, they canceled the OPV contracts that would have ensured 25 to 30 years of reliable border security, and instead, they procured that very Cape-class vessel that is now down Starbers Bay. That is their record that they purchased from the Chinese government, and that decision has been proven to be ineffective and wasteful. The record is clear, Madam Presiding Officer. The PNM has acted decisively to secure our borders, while the UNC left Tobago exposed. Madam Presiding Officer, please, I ask the member to retract. She said I will. Madam Presiding Officer, facts and the truth is immune to those on the other side. So I understand their challenge. The PNM, let's talk about resource allocation, because if one was to believe the Chief Secretary, you would believe that there's absolutely nothing happening in terms of national security. In one breath, he trumps up all the achievement of the TTPS. But who is resourcing the TTPS? Is it by abracadabra that these things are happening? It is through decisive action of the Ministry of National Security and the National Security Council headed by the Prime Minister. The record of this PNM government has consistently allocated resources to bolster Tobago's security infrastructure. The PNM is the administration after we were neglected in Tobago here. When the UNC came in 2010, the Orville London administration would have already agreed with the Manning administration at that time to build 2 modern police stations. And what did their friends do? Their friends left those 2 important projects untouched. And it took a PNM administration led by a Tobago Prime Minister to take those projects and bring it back to fore, even when the country was facing significant financial challenges. So we built a police station for the people of the Far East in Roxborough. And then we built a police station for the people in the West at Shervan. We didn't stop there. The fire service officers in Far East had a challenge with their location, and therefore that fire service was deemed, the building was compromised. And it was a PNM administration caring and loving the people of Tobago ensured that we built a brand new modern fire station for the people of Roxborough. That is the PNM record, Madam Presiding Officer. So to come here and give the impression that somebody don't like Tobago and somebody just want to punish Tobago, with somebody who don't like you in the time where you have significant financial challenges across the country, take those same very scarce resources and ensure you get those important facilities. Because we heard the Chief Secretary in one breath tell us, yes, there are challenges across the country. So it's not only Tobago or only the fire officers where there are challenges. But to the best of the ability of this administration, national security receives one of the largest budgets across ministries. And that is shared across the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that we are kept safe. Madam Presiding Officer, that drug bust that the Chief Secretary referred to didn't happen by accident. It is national security working collaboratively with CARICOM partners and the international partners like Southcom that led to that seizure. And the efforts of national security is not isolated. So though you may not see the actions of outside forces, because national security does not start within the borders of Trinidad and Tobago. It starts further because we are a transnational shipment point for narcotics. That is a fact. And therefore it has to leave somewhere. So to give the impression that this issue is relegated to Trinidad and Tobago and somehow the Minister of National Security. And I want to remind the Chief Secretary, because you see, people who misrepresent the truth don't have memory. And he's on record here saying he told the Prime Minister to, what? What he said? To mind the business that you're responsible for. That disrespectful comment was specific in capital letters, and it is there for the world to see. Stay out Tobago business. That was the disrespectful nature of the Chief Secretary speaking to the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So in one breath you're telling the Prime Minister, stay out, don't come here. But when you want to cast blame, you're there telling the Prime Minister, well, come now. So which one is it? Which one is it? And Madam Presiding Officer, let me continue on the infrastructural improvements. What are the facts? The PNM government has consistently prioritized infrastructure development in Tobago, and I mentioned the Scarborough Fire Station that the Chief Secretary mentioned is actively engaging the attention of the Cabinet. That is a matter that is soon to be resolved. Development and management of a country, all things cannot happen at the same time. Some things have to be prioritized, and therefore, yes, we know there would always be needs. You all imagine managing Tobago, can you do everything at the same time? Because you are dealing with scarce resources, and therefore, when you are dealing with scarce resources, you've got to prioritize how it is appropriated. And that is what management requires, especially prudent management. So you deal with the high priority issues and then you treat with the issues as they come. The Chief Secretary calls for new facilities, ignores the substantial progress being made. You know, the Chief Secretary sometimes reminds me of that ungrateful little boy. That no matter where you give him, he always crying for more. And nothing could ever please the Chief Secretary. Because he just believes he's entitled. And he don't even appreciate what he's getting or what is being done. This kind of behavior is not leadership, Madam Presiding Officer. It is a failure to act when action is needed. The PNM has consistently upheld the highest standards of accountability and transparency in public spending. Contrast that with his UNC friends. Compare that with his UNC friends and how they deal with procurement, because you hear him talking about that the procuring the scanner is taking so long, and perhaps he just wants the government to flout procurement practices, as we heard in the questions and answer today. But that is not the PNM way. The PNM understand that you have public servants with responsibilities that have to do public servant functions. And therefore, that is what is it? There's a procurement process in place, and therefore the government provides the resource, but the public officers have to implement. And therefore, to come here and pretend like, again, is the government. So in one breath, you have a secretary telling you she don't know how they procure and how they spend 16 million. But all of a sudden, in this instance, it is the government. So it's not you when it's your time to account, but you're good at pointing fingers at others. I learned you must cast the beam out of your eyes first before you take the beam out of others. And perhaps the Chief Secretary needs to mind Tobago business. He's the one that needs to mind Tobago business. rather than those trips in Trinidad on a weekend. Madam Presiding Officer, it is a travesty that the Chief Secretary who aligns himself with the same UNC, the ones that currently there's an issue, national security issue about procurement, because that very Chinese vessel that their friends procured, no, the damning vessels that their friends procured, those are the smaller near-shore patrol vessels. Their friends procured that. And there's a current investigation in France where it is alleged that over $200 million out of the contract was caught up in some bribery, and that investigation is still ongoing. So we don't do it like that. No one could point fingers of my PNM administration in the central government.
Assemblyman
like
Morris, again, I'm going to caution you with the inferences. That's actually imputing improper motives
Madam,
against a member.
Who member?
You are aligning persons within this administration to persons who have bribery charges. I won't allow that here.
No. I said the UNC government. I didn't say any individual. And on top of that,
You minority leader, one thing I'm not going to do is argue. Please be cautioned. You are cautioned about your inferences. You may continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, the information I've placed is information that is in the public record as reported in the daily newspapers. And of course, when it comes to this administration being aligned with UNC, there's a photo with the Chief Secretary and the current leader of opposition where the UNC has over over their heads Team UNC. So it is on that basis I am aligning. It is. And that's on the UNC's page. That is on the UNC's page.
Members, Minority Leader, I'm going to ask you to retract that statement.
What?
I am going to ask you to retract this statement. No. Members, I am not going to allow any imputing of improper motives against any member in this House.
Who member have imputed? Madam President, can you point me to who member have imputed?
Minority Leader, are you challenging the chair?
I'm simply asking for clarification.
I simply said retract and move on.
Which aspect of the statement, Madam Presiding Officer, because I have to get the context. I've made a lot of points in that one statement.
Your last statement, retract and move on.
All right, I so retract. Madam Presiding Officer, and I'll move on. The point of the matter is, Madam Presiding Officer, what the Chief Secretary is attempting to do, recognizing that there's an election very closely, and they would have to come to account to the people of Tobago, and understanding that persons like himself and the Secretary of the Deputy Chief Secretary, when they were on this side, they accused the then Kelvin Charles administration of dereliction of duty because they told Kelvin Charles the responsibility, notwithstanding what the law says, is that they are the Tobago House of Assembly, and if they don't, I think just to quote directly, this is posted on the Facebook page of the Deputy Chief Secretary saying, the Chief Secretary then does not believe that crime in Tobago is the responsibility of the Tobago House of Assembly. Therefore, there is no specific anti-crime plan. So that is the Deputy Chief Secretary saying that because the Chief Secretary at the time said that they do not, under law, have responsibility for national security in Tobago, she took that to mean that they don't have a plan. And all I would simply ask, what has changed? Because if the Chief Secretary at that time was to be blamed, who should we now blame? And that is the fact. So this administration, having failed so recklessly, callously, and destructively. They are now trying to deflect. But I will remind the Chief Secretary of his responsibilities, because you see, what is the fact? The fact of the matter is that, yes, under the 6th schedule, crime prevention and resourcing crime prevention is the responsibility of the Ministry of National Security. But what about the prevention? What about treating and dealing with the causation, the causative factors of crime? Who is responsible for that? Who is responsible for that 12-year-old that we heard from Tobago that is in a gang? Who is responsible for that young man who lost his life so tragically that went to Signal Hill Secondary School? Who is responsible for that? Should the Minister of National Security come and teach us here in Tobago how to obey the law, how to build good families, how to provide resources such as playing grounds and ensure we have youth programs and policies? Should the Minister of National Security come and determine that here in Tobago? And will we allow him to come and determine that in Tobago? So, Madam Presiding Officer, the THA has a significant role in crime prevention through its socioeconomic policies and its programs. Under this administration, policies and initiatives that could deter criminal behavior have been dismantled. Recreational facilities across Tobago have been left in ruin, and they're talking about this project in WIM. Let me make it abundantly clear. Yes, this project has been outstanding for some time, but this project is a project that, because of the changing needs of the people of WIM, have been redesigned and remodeled, because the people of WIM determined it started off as we wanted simply a building. And then when that project, and I could talk with a level of confidence, because that is a project that was the brainchild of former area representative Assemblyman Claudia Groom-Duke, to treat with challenges of this very nature, crime. And because the people of WIM determined at that time, we don't just want the skills training building, the young fellas started to play football there. I created a program called Save Night Football, Sports Against Violence and Drug Abuse. That is the record of this area representative for the people of WIM. And we started that program, that project there. And when the villagers enjoyed that so much, they determined we also want to have some kind of sporting, recreational facility to be included. So the scope had to change, and of course that would create delays. But that project, just prior to the PNM demitting office, was about 90% completed. What has happened for the last 3 years? You have received a project that was 90% completed, but because the one person who stands as representative of the people of WIM is the PNM candidate, you have left that project to rot. That is the fact. So don't come here trying to mislead Tobagonians.
Member, you have 5 minutes.
I will use that 5 minutes judiciously, because I have some more things to say. Madam Presiding Officer, you see, this administration has overseen the dissemination of the construction sector, so there are economic factors as well. Because as soon as they came in, they blacklisted the main contractors on the island who hired over hundreds and hundreds of young people and families. And when you denied and derailed and took away those opportunities, it meant you had 100 people on blocks doing absolutely nothing. And after I had these young men hopeless, the drug lords came in. So the facts are there. 2023, we only had 21 gangs. 2024, under this hapless, hopeless, uncaring, dysfunctional administration, we have risen to over 41 gangs. Is the Minister of National Security to be held accountable for that? That is your record. That is your failed policies. That is the failed policies of putting all the contracts up to the point that a member shamelessly stood here and couldn't even confirm if he met with a contractor. He don't know. He don't even know. But Madam Presiding Officer, so they have dismantled the no playing fields, private sector crash, and on top of that, they themselves are in circles, as heard in a voice record, which they confirmed was them, was plotting to misuse public funds. So them themselves, they are currently under criminal investigation, Madam Presiding Officer.
Minority Leader, I just cautioned
sorry,
you.
Madam. No, I'm just saying
Anything before the court
Okay.
is sub judice and cannot be spoken within this house.
It hasn't reached the court yet.
I don't know that.
Sorry.
And anything that is before the court cannot be spoken within this house. You are out of order, and I am asking you to retract that statement and continue.
Under criminal investigation? No, I can't say that they are under criminal investigation, Madam Presiding Officer.
I just cautioned you
Wow.
that anything that is before the courts is sub judice. Please be familiar. I don't know that.
It's before the police, not the court.
I don't know that. Did you hear what I just said?
Yeah?
Did you hear what I just said? I am cautioning you.
Wait, told me retract.
I am cautioning you.
I stand guided, Madam Presiding Officer. But the point that is being made is that the fish does only rot from the head. So if the head rotten, what else you expect? And if you have criminals in an enterprise, in government, or in an administration.
Madam Presiding Officer, I sit here and I'm listening, and I want to invoke Standing Order 45.5. The member continues to impute improper motives against the members of this administration, and I do not think that we should continue to allow that in this house. In addition to that, I stand on a point of order. The member indicated before that under this administration, the amount of gangs arose to 41. I listened to the member's presentation. That is incorrect. The number of gangs based on the report that was submitted is 28. So it will do him well to listen when the presentations are being made, so he doesn't stand in the house talking lies and submitting all of us
Please,
to this rhetoric.
members, please sit.
Thank you.
Please sit. I acknowledge your contribution, Councillor Boris. I'm also going to caution you all, everyone, each member here, that there is something called unparliamentary language. There's a standing order that guides what you can and cannot say against members of this house. Retract and move on.
Madam
And
Presiding Officer.
you have a couple seconds left.
Madam Presiding, I want some injury time.
You have a couple seconds left.
Madam Presiding Officer, so let me just
Wrap up.
Madam Presiding Officer, so all this requires is for big people to sit down and talk about serious issues. We passed a motion in this house where we asked we agreed that we will all go to the Parliament and have a conversation. The Chief Secretary ignored that. So what he's coming to the house to tell the house about give him authority to do? The Chief Secretary will do whatsoever he wants to do. And this is my position, Madam Presiding Officer. I retract this statement, and also I am amend, because I just looked at the notes. It is in 2024, there was 2019, 24 gangs, and in 2022, he said Tobago had an additional 4 gangs.
Thank you, Assemblyman
Right, so
Morris.
thank you.
Member, you may now join this debate.
For the opportunity to join this debate. I want to greet my colleagues, everybody in this house, and to wish them the best for this year. as well. The last time I was on my legs in this house, Madam Presiding Officer, I sought leave from the then deputy to read portions of my presentation, of course, because I am aging a little more, and my retaining skills have been affected by same, and from that time up until now, not much has changed. So I seek your leave, if you would be so kind, to allow me to read some portions of that which I have prepared today.
The leave has been granted.
Yes. You know, sitting and listening, I have come to the conclusion that we on this side are a group of people with tremendous ability to sustain ourselves and to follow the rules and listen to stupidness.
Member, I just cautioned you all against unparliamentary language.
My apologies. I did not know stupidness was
Retract and continue.
Considered retracted, Madam Presiding Officer. But we have the capacity to listen to stuff that I consider, as a media person in Antigua would call it, flushable waste. And in reference to the minorities, I don't even know what to call it, is madness. Because really, according to him the last time, no, Madam President, in your absence, the last time, he said that if you do the same thing, the same way, and you're expecting a different result, then you are a madman. He said that. And so, because the presentations are the same, it is reasonable to conclude that what we have just heard for the last half an hour is madness. You know, the thing got me so upset that I forgot to thank the people of Bethel and New Grange for the opportunity for me to be here. My tolerance level is not as good as it should be, in all honesty. But I want to thank the people of Bethel and New Grange for this humbling opportunity to be in this house and to be a part of debates and so on. You know, in the average society, a trifling few get the opportunity to be representatives. And so I am always dripping with gratitude when this opportunity arises, when I have the opportunity to stand in this space. I come to this house and engage in debate because these sentiments drive me. People have elected me to represent them, and that affords me the privilege. I come to this house expecting that we will have some serious, sensible conversation that is uplifting and productive and meaningful. Not necessarily to conform to the norms and forms that we are accustomed to, the political banter and, the small talk, but something sensible. Rashot had a calypso called Latrine Singers. I don't know if anybody ever heard that calypso. And where he was kind of chiding with calypsonians about singing some things that make a little sense. And you're tempted to say some of the things that you hear in this house is latrinated talk. And the reason why it is bothersome, because these are hallowed halls. The information goes on the public record. People are listening. People, young people are listening.
Assemblyman Duke.
It's the same thing as saying.
No. Have a seat, Assemblyman Baines. Let's set the tone for the rest of the year, please. Assemblyman Duke. Assemblyman Duke, you are addressing your colleagues. This is an August chamber, and I won't allow that. I won't allow that. I won't allow that. Officer, can you please escort him out? Can you please escort him out of this house, please? Kindly escort him out of this house, please. Officers, please escort him out of this house. Assemblyman Duke.
Tell me what standing order should permitted by. Where shall the point to be standing order? Or the point to be standing order was violated by rights. It's not outside order. Mr. Ahmad, you can touch me assault me. I just have to assault. You got the other beating me too. Assaulted by beating. No, just say what standing order is. If I touch me, that's not by beating. I don't trust. That's not by beating.
You can take your leave.
So what I bring now soon, I'm Mickey Mouse house. I'm Mickey Mouse house. Mouse in this house.
Delia, ask him to cut the
Mickey Mouse house. This man will take you to the man presiding officer.
Not in the house, please.
This man across here.
Not in the house.
My phone will take me.
This house now stands suspended for 5 minutes.
Welcome back, Tobago. The 2025 series of democratic debates kicks off with a double header. We have two motions for deliberation. Minority Leader Kelvon Morris is calling for an audit into the procurement process and the execution of 4 major road projects on the island. Mr. Morris is also calling for the Public Accounts Committee to be immediately convened to urgently review these expenditures. Chief Secretary Farley Augustine will also lay a motion calling on the Minister of National Security to establish a memorandum of understanding on effective strategies for the island's security and increase in the allocation of resources to Tobago to maintain, upgrade, and modernize national security infrastructures. Thursday, January 23rd from 1:30 p.m. You're welcome to come in and look on or log on to our social media spaces to witness the action. Either way, don't miss it. Welcome back, Tobago. The 2025 series of democratic debates kicks off with a double header. We have two motions for deliberation. Minority Leader Kelvon Morris is calling for an audit into the procurement process and the execution of 4 major road projects on the island. Mr. Morris is also calling for the Public Accounts Committee to be immediately convened to urgently review these expenditures. Chief Secretary Farley Augustine will also lay a motion calling on the Minister of National Security to establish a memorandum of understanding on effective strategies for the island's security and increase in the allocation of resources to Tobago to maintain, upgrade, and modernize national security infrastructures. Thursday, January 23rd from 1:30 p.m. You're welcome to come in and look on or log on to our social media spaces to witness the action. Either way, don't miss it.
particular motion take precedent because of the gravity of the situation that we're dealing with. While it is true that Tobago's security is a 6th scheduled item, if we do nothing, we will die here. And we are concluding that Tobago's security is Tobago's business. And so, while we are talking, if you don't like it, you can leave, as we have seen. We will just say, hasta la vista. And don't let the door split you where the door hit you where the Lord split you while you're going out. But we will make sure that we engage in some kind of sensible conversation trying to edify our people and give them a sense of security about what we're trying to do in the Tobago space. You know, I'm tempted to even address some of the other things that the minority leader said, but I figure it will be a waste of time, and time is too precious to waste it. We have enough, we have heard enough for the day. The motion itself, we are in agreement. The right to life, the right to security is a constitutional right. We are in agreement. We have a SOE afoot, and the jury is out as to whether or not the SOE is of any significant benefit. We are seeing police operations around and all of that. Our resolve really is that this matter that the Chief Secretary has raised in his presentation is a matter of paramount importance, because despite what was said a while ago about new police stations and all of that, well, thankfully, there was an admitting that we don't have enough resources. But it is perhaps useful for the minority leader maybe to go and see the conditions at the regiment base. It may be useful for him to go to the prisons. It may be useful for him to go to the police stations. It can be that he has gone. Based on what the Chief Secretary has described, it cannot be. But the thing about it is that even though this is not really our responsibility, as a people, as a government, as a matter of fact, we're not sitting down and twiddling our thumbs, though. We have to make sure that our people are protected to the best of our ability. And as the Chief Secretary said earlier, that while we are not being callous and being, unlawful and break every rule, but the life and security of the people of Tobago is of paramount importance. And we will not sit by and allow political grandstanding by a minister in Port of Spain and whatever else takes place while our people.
The government should not be called into question in this house.
Is grandstanding not a word that is?
I did. Standing out of 45.
Okay. Anyway, Madam Presiding Officer, as a government, we understand that every government has to try its best in its policies to create the environment so that its population could thrive. And in spite of the security issues that we are dealing with, as a government, we try our best, and we are providing social support, trying to get as many persons employed as we can, whether you are low on the totem pole or high up, we try to get as many persons. And I was reflecting on the project that we're doing at the division, the community restoration project, and we've been able to recruit 1,440 people in the Tobago space, 2023 and 2024. And I think that's a good thing. The Division of Community Development providing all kinds of training for young people and so on, and I'm sure the Secretary will talk about that and so on, and the settlements and the Division of Finance, grants and so on, to give people opportunities so that they can go after their dreams and so on, and take care of themselves and their families. Because we believe that there is a correlation between the state of a man and the activities that a man engages in. So I understand that government has that kind of responsibility. We do not have a private sector in Tobago. So government pretty much employs the lion's share of the population. And when we try to do that, is doing its best to make sure that our people has the best opportunity in the present conditions that we are living in this place that we call Tobago. There's a lot of community empowerment that is taking place. And I also want to make the point, when the minority attempted to suggest that we, the government, are responsible for the crime situation in Tobago, that is preposterous. What under your watch means? What under your watch means?
Members, both of you could have a seat. I am not going to tolerate this type of behavior. Member, continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, I am not trying to be disobedient or anything like that, but I interpreted under your watch to mean just what I said. And I don't know if that is an unreasonable conclusion, but that seems to be what is being said, that this administration is responsible for the growing crime in Tobago. That seems to be, that's my understanding. And I'm saying if that is the understanding, it is preposterous. It is misleading. It is mischievous. But we will continue to do our work. We'll continue to do our work. Well, the Chief Secretary talked about the work that we've been doing with the prisoners, trying to assist. And in fact, what the government has been doing is to provide in large part support for the protective services in transportation and housing and these things. And I want to thank the Secretary for Finance for sending us this information and so on. That from 2021, or in the year 2021, this government assisted the protective services with $958,000. And that was to cover housing and transport for the most part. 2022, $720,000. 2023, $740,900. 2024, $780,000. So from 2021 to 2024, we have supported the Ministry of National Security.
On what? On what?
I don't know how we could say no, just a point of clarity.
Madam Presiding Officer, let me repeat. I said that the government provided in 2021 $958. But by the way, this government was installed in 2021 and all. But I mean, I understand that sometimes your mind so engaged in things that are not useful that you also have loss of memory. Because we have seen many examples in this house where he says things and forget. In fact, just half an hour before.
Member.
All right. But anyway, as I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted. We have supported the Ministry of National Security to the tune of $3.198 million from 2021 to 2024. Wow. Although it is a 6th schedule item. Wow. And the Secretary of Finance also said that because of the rising crime statistics that we've seen in the Tobago space, that at present there is a bill for an additional $1 million, which will mean that our spend will be about 4.2, just under $4.2 million. Money is drawn from a resource that is already scarce. And the minority agree that the resource is scarce. So it is a contradiction to say that we don't like Tobagonians. And there's the next thing too. If the condition that the Chief Secretary described is a manifestation of the love that the Ministry of National Security has for its personnel in Tobago, something is wrong. It's mad people. If the chief had to be spoken to provide mattresses for soldiers, Chief Secretary had to send mattresses down in the prisons with love. When I was in the other place, CPEP gangs were working in Plymouth, taking care of a place, fixing up the place to house the security forces, because we are concerned about the security for Tobago people, and it's not our responsibility. True. So those things I think that tick me off. That I mean, oh gosh, say something that make a little sense now, man. Say something. But again, my wife just called and said, calm yourself. And I'm thankful. Madam Presiding Officer, my assessment of the state of Tobago can be likened unto a city under siege. And for us to have an appreciation for that, we have to kind of know what a siege is. It's an ancient Near East military strategy. The engineering of a siege is pretty much when you want to overtake a city, you surround the entire city with your army. You cut off the supply. You make sure you shut off the water supply. You clog up all the wells and prevent merchants from going in. So after a while, the people in the city, the resources will run out. Water supply runs out, and there will be chaos internally, and malnutrition, and all these things step in, and you become easy prey. You understand? And they can just step in and overtake you. I'm coming. We in this Tobago have been circumnavigated by agencies of state. Police sometimes. We have heard these police officers, and I'm talking about officers, that have gone into the homes of officials executing their duty, so they say. We have heard about digging up in drawers, and no pun intended. Revealing comely and uncomely items of members and all that kind of stuff. We have heard about licensing officers and stuff. I was present going to the secretary's home. We have no point of reference to them things. Confiscating device on an evening after sundown.
Member, relevant.
I'm making the point, Madam Presiding Officer, that we are under siege. We are under siege. And I was just saying the siege as we understood it. Right? That we are now surrounded by some of these things as a government and as a people. Procurement legislation that seem to favor a familiar few.
Members, when somebody is on their feet contributing as per standing order, please allow this person to do so uninterrupted. Member, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yes. I'm talking about this circumnavigation. I'm almost there, Madam President. Red media houses who has no interest in the truth, But the mission is to embarrass and report errors of inexactitudes about the Tobago government. Disproportionate vigilance. And incessant, listen to this, an incessant accentuating of deficiencies in Tobago agencies about performance. And so when you compare in Trinidad, 60, 70, and 80% worse. All this is to try to weaken the resolve of the Tobago government and the Tobago people. And annexed to that, underfund the projects that we're trying to get accomplished. It's a siege. It's a siege, you see, it's a siege. So the aim of all this that has been engineered is to break the spirit of the government of Tobago, to keep the people of Tobago in bondage, to try and see if by doing all of this we'll become so malnourished and they will be able to overpower us and overrun us and regain power. All this is about PNM attempting to come back in office. Don't get it twisted. All of this.
Against who? Minority leader.
Members here who are PNM, because he used the word PNM, and we are PNM representatives. He is imputing improper motive.
So you're not trying to get back in power?
Madam, he's saying the PNM is engineered. Where is the proof?
Members, please. Member, you have 2 minutes.
So you're not going to retract? Madam Presiding Officer, it is my reasonable conclusion that the actions of the central government as it relates to their funding of the Tobago government's projects and Tobago government's business, added to some of the things I just raised, is all part of a plan to regain power in this place that we call Tobago. But I will say this according to George Frederick Leacock, that and a green donkey with wings you shall not see. Simply because God will help us. Simply because we will dig in our heels. We will pull out all the stops. We shall not be moved. We will not be moved. Why?
Member, Minority Leader, I've said this time and time again, when somebody's on their feet, please allow them their presentation uninterrupted. You can continue, Member.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I have to be saying something, boy. I'm going to be saying something. But we will dig in our heels. We will pull out all the stops. We shall not be moved because our anchor holds, boy. Yeah, and grip tight in the will of the Tobago people and the sovereign purpose of the Almighty God. And I say that without contradiction. We shall work assiduously to assist in the securing of a regime change in Port of Spain. I think I need to say that again. Yes. We shall work assiduously.
Member, your time is up.
Additional speaking time of 10 minutes for the member of Bethel New Grain to complete his contribution.
Honorable members, the question put is that the member be afforded an additional 10 minutes of speaking time to conclude his presentation. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against, say no. The ayes have it. Member, you have 10 additional minutes to complete your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I think I'll probably take about 3. I want to thank my colleague as well. We shall work. Is it the song that we have to say that again? We shall work assiduously.
This is his presentation. Can
Is
you
what?
please do so uninterruptedly? Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. You're very kind. You're very kind. I know it's been a very interesting day today. Some of us had a little too much sugar, apparently. But we will work. I think maybe it's this song and it could be the thing I'm saying. That we will work let me say it again. We shall work assiduously to assist in the securing of a regime change in Port of Spain. That's the chorus of the song. We shall work assiduously to the securing of a regime change in Port of Spain, simply because that is the only hope that we have here in Tobago. And I want to say this as a close. I'm really going to close now. If I only had the power to make a decree like the laws of the Medes and Persians that alter it not, my decree will be words like accountability, transparency, and fairness be banished from any sentence that appear them in it. So, and we have to continue, Madam Presiding Officer. Every time there's an elastification, every time there's an exaggeration, every time there is a statement made on the left-hand side of truth, we will stand and correct it, because that is our responsibility. And as a government in Tobago, we shall not be stopped. We shall not bow to intimidation. We will prevail, because God will assist us so to do. I thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Members, before we continue, we are 3 minutes off of the 4:30 mark. Can the House come to a conclusion as to if we would sit or if we would break for lunch and return? Leader of Assembly Business.
Madam Presiding Officer, I'd like to move that this House adjourns for 30 minutes from 4:30 to 5 p.m. and then we would reconvene.
Honorable members, this House is now suspended for lunch. We would return in 30 minutes' time to resume the House. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. We would resume in 30 minutes' time.
Welcome back, Tobago. The 2025 series of democratic debates kicks off with a double header. We have two motions for deliberation. Minority Leader Kelvon Morris is calling for an audit into the procurement process and the execution of 4 major road projects on the island. Mr. Morris is also calling for the Public Accounts Committee to be immediately convened to urgently review these expenditures. Chief Secretary Farley Augustine will also lay a motion calling on the Minister of National Security to establish a memorandum of understanding on effective strategies for the island's security and increase in the allocation of resources to Tobago to maintain, upgrade, and modernize national security infrastructures. Thursday, January 23rd from 1:30 p.m. You're welcome to come in and look on or log on to our social media spaces to witness the action. Either way, don't miss it.